We've already talked about how to solve equations by isolating the variable and doing those inverse operations. Now we're dealing with decimals, so these are really just putting two things together that you already know how to do. We're going to solve by inverse operations, so remember I'm trying to get x isolated. And for my first question, I'm going to start on the side with the x but furthest away, so I'm going to add 5.4 to each side first, which we're very familiar with. It's just now we have some decimals involved, so that's going to change things just a little. 1 plus 4 is 5, 6 plus 5 is 11, so I have 2.3x equals 11.5. Now I have to divide by 2.3, so 11.5 divided by 2.3 means I'd have to move that decimal one place to make it a whole number, so I move it on the inside as well. 23 doesn't go into 11. I'm going to guess that it goes in 5 times, because if I took about 2 times about 5, it'd be about 10, which would be like 11, like 100 basically. So I'm just gonna hope that that's the right one. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. I'm a really good guesser. And so I end up with x being 5. Now remember, especially when you're dealing with decimals, that you're welcome to take that 5 and plug it back into the equation and hope that the two sides do equal each other. It's called doing a check, so feel free to do that check. For my second one, I'm going to isolate the x over 4.5, so I am going to first subtract 3.14 from each side. On the left side, I still have my ratio of x and 4.5. On the right side, I have 2 minus 3.14. So be careful here, because I can't take 3.14 away from 2. So now I'm going to have to switch the order to find the difference, which obviously I can do in my head, right? 3.14 minus 2 would be 1.14. Their difference is the negative of that, so negative 1.14, because that negative value is bigger. Now I'm going to multiply each side by 4.5, because that's going to get rid of the fraction. So if I multiply this by 4.5, I'm going to have to do that off to the side. 1.14, 4.5, I get 20 and 7 and 5. Bring down my 0, I get 16 and 5 and 4. Then I add and add and add and add, which gives me x equals 5.13, and it should be negative, because a negative times a positive gives me a negative. This one's a little bit more complicated because I've got some distributive property involved. So 0.02 will need to be distributed first. 0.02 times x is 0.02x. 0.02 times 5, again, any work that you need to do off to the side, you're welcome to do. The more and more that you do these, and don't cheat and use your calculator, but the more and more you do these, you're going to find it easier to do. So you know that 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 0.02 is 0.10. So if you can do those in your head, feel free. So that's my new question. Notice each time I'm just going to write what I have left over. Now I want to get all my x's to one side. I'm going to choose to subtract 0.02x from each side. And I'm lining them up, so that gives me 0.1 on this side, or 0.10. On this side I get 0.1x minus 4.2. I'm going to add 4.2 to each side. If I add 4.2, I get 4.3, which equals 0.1x. So if I divide by 0.1, remember we talked about, excuse me, how to divide by a number smaller than 1. It's going to make that number bigger. What's going to end up happening is I can move this over 1 and move this over 1. That's 43 divided by 1, which is 43. So x in this case is 43. Again, not a bad idea to plug it back in and do a check to make sure you know what you're doing. Here's one for you to try on your own, so press pause, do the entire question, then press play to see how you did. What I would do first on this one is decide that I want to get all of my x's to one side. I like those nice positive numbers, so I'm choosing to subtract 5.4 from each side because my choices were between 5.4 and 9.8. And if I subtracted 9.8, I end up with a negative number. So that gives me negative 10.8 equals, and when I subtract this, I get 4.4x, and I keep my minus 2. Now I'm going to add 2 to each side. And notice what's happening here. I've got an addition problem, but I've got two different signs. So what I'm actually doing is subtracting or finding the difference. So 8 minus 0 is 8. 10 minus 2 is 8. And the value is negative because my bigger number was negative. So even though I was technically adding, because I was adding to a negative and different signs means to find the difference, I had to find the difference between those two. Now I have 4.4x equals negative 8.8. Again, if you can do the mental math, feel free to do that. You should end up with negative 2 equals x. And if you can't do the mental math, you just do that division off to the side.